All right, it is that time of year. Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast, and welcome back, J Leman, Illini legend, All-American, and great Illini Inquirer football analyst, and we're excited to have him back for another season. He's back on Big Ten Network as well. Jay, football season's right around the corner. Glad to have you back, man.
Oh, it's always exciting, Jeremy. I'm glad to be back, too, with the audience on the Inquirer podcast, and always great talking with you. You know, August is always a funny time of year for any football player or any former football player. They'll all tell you they have the same feeling that hits you, and it never really leaves, you know, and the hottest week of the year usually comes the first week of August, and we had some heat. It's been cooler lately, at least here in Illinois, and but you always get that feeling of like, got to earn your position again, and that's what's going on right now.
Yeah, and it's always to the point, Jay, where it's like August 19th, August 20th. This is where like training camp, it's like, all right, we need to play somebody. Like we need to see them play somebody else. As a player, what is that like on August 19th, August 20th?
I mean, the goal is to get to game week, right? I don't think people realize that game week is a lot easier than camp, because you start to go against a scout team of, say, you know, Eastern Illinois or whatever opponent you're playing. In camp, it's literally 3 weeks of good on good, playing guys that you're matched up to equally on the offense, or you're competing with people in drills, maybe at your position group that you're right here and fighting. And you've really got to bring it every day from a physical standpoint. Like, you have got to bring it and be physical every day, because you're being evaluated every rep. And I think the mental toll that it takes on you, and you may not see it the first week or the first 2 weeks, but really getting past that 14, 15-day mark, you start to see stuff. And this is why it's so important. I would never say that I crushed it in camp week 1 or week 2, because I'm lifting weights, I'm in the cold tub, I'm in the training room, I'm having proper nutrition. By the time I got to week 12 and 13, 14, I'm not going down in my performance. I'm staying steady or getting a little bit better. And guys that don't take care of themselves or get nicked up early in camp, what you'll see is that you'll start to get separated up. It's not so much the injury that prevents them from actually playing or you know, their play. It's their lack of recovery after a practice or a little nick up. They can't take the reps they need to, so they can't progress to where they need to be at to win a spot. Now, that's just the in-depth piece of it, but those are the little things where you see like, hey, you might be even here, but after 14 days, 15 practices, it's like, wow, you start to see separation. I felt like I always solidified my spot when I was battling in week 3 of training camp. I thought that was the week, is the final impression, really before they're going to say, okay, who's going to be my starter as we go into game week. And once you get into game week, you're going to get the first shot as that starter in the game, right? Because you've won it. Now they're going to evaluate every game, but that is a huge thing to get to be a week 1 starter, because it's basically I've been better than everybody else in camp at my position, and it's my spot to lose. So that's how it all works out. And so it's a huge accomplishment to be a week 1 starter. Think about this. From the time the season ends, off-season training to spring football to the workouts to summer workouts to fall camp, you're working to be a game 1 starter. And to get that is a huge accomplishment. Man, I'm already starting out being long-winded. Got lots of coffee in the system today. It's going to be a great year.
Yeah. Well, we're going to do a season preview in this podcast with J Leman. Sure. We will break down this team. We'll break down both sides of the ball. But let's start macro here, Jay, as we focus on year 4 of Brett Bielema, year 3 with offensive coordinator Barry Lunny, year 2, of course, with Aaron Henry. But this has been a more competitive, I would say competent tenure with Brett Bielema. They have taken a step forward, but have missed out on these opportunities. So what does year 4 mean for this program as they enter against Eastern Illinois on August 29th?
So first off, we got to admit that, hey, there's 2 or 3 games. We're 2 or 3 games away from having one of the most successful 3-year runs that we've ever had at Illinois. Maybe Makovic, you know, not even Mike White under his first 3 years would have been as successful, just because Coach White was kind of getting it rolling in the early 80s and stuff. First of all, I still think Brett Bielema is one great coach, right? I think we got a great coach. I think he's the right guy for this job. And I think also we knew that it wasn't going to be necessarily easy turning around Illinois football. Now, I think we got our hopes up after year 2, because it was like, okay, this is special. But I'm really interested. At Illinois, we're we're probably not going to be, especially with the Big Ten Conference, 18 teams now, in the top 5 in the conference recruiting. As we're recruiting against Oregon, we're recruiting against USC, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. Those are probably going to be your top 4 or 5 teams in the recruiting battle, right? Can we recruit guys to our system that fit? And I think we're going to really see that pop this season as far as in the portal, who fits. What guys have we recruited out of high school that fit our system? We saw flashes of that 2 years ago with Matthew Bailey. We saw a flash of that with Caden Fagan. We've seen McCray have some of those moments as well. But who's going to fit to the system, and can they be successful in the systems that Barry Lunny's trying to run, that Aaron Henry's trying to run, and can we set ourselves up for success? I think that's really the question. If we want to be in Iowa, Wisconsin, or a Michigan State of the 2010s, where we are a system program-based role player developmental kind of program, we have to recruit well to what we want to do. And I think that's the big question. And what I'm really looking forward to in year 4 are who are these guys that are 3-stars that are going to turn into all Big Ten players, right? And could it be a Dylan Rosiak, who was a Lovie Smith recruit, but obviously seems to really be progressing at a level where he could possibly be an honorable mention or a second team, maybe a first team, Big Ten defensive player. So those are the things I'm looking for as far as player development goes.
Yeah, and I know he doesn't like when people say this because they're all his teams, right? But he recruited this team. Right? This is almost entirely his recruit. So I'm with you, Jay. If they're going to be a developmental program, this is kind of the year you start to see it. I asked you, what do you want to hit on? And I just want to throw it out there. The defensive guy wanted to go offense first. So this is my decision. But this has got to be hey, we've seen flashes. Like Barry Lunny has improved this offense to, again, competency. We're starting to see passing attack. The running game took a step back last year with the offensive line and rushing issues, but do they have a leap in them, Jay? Like, what do you make going into the year of Barry Lundy's offense with, for the first time under Brett Bielema, a returning starting quarterback?
So as an Illinois fan, and if you followed Illinois football for any kind of, go back and think, when were you really excited about the potential of the offense? Like, think about the years.
2008.
2008, you were excited. You had weapons, right? Maybe you could say that Shieldhouse with Jenkins and Michael LaShore. Maybe I think in recent memory, Rod Smith schematically or Reggie Corbin, I could make an argument that he got it going.
Cubit with Wes Hunt early on, like they had some success. The defense was the issue then. So, but it's few and far between.
Right. Like, think about it. Like when was the last time you were like, man, I think our offense is going to go win us some games. Or we got a guy at quarterback that we're down 6. We got to score 7 with 3 minutes left. Can he make the plays, and does he have the receivers to make the play? Or we have a legitimate offensive coordinator that we believe that can schematically get our guys in the right position. Well, I got good news for Illini fans. I am more high on this offense than I have been in the last decade for any offense, okay? And the reason is look on your Illinois history books of how many times we have a returning quarterback with the experience of Luke Altmyer. I mean, we had Brandon Peters, we had Wes Lunt at times, and then you go back to Shieldhouse and also and Juice, but that's about it, right? And I think Altmyer is going to take a big leap. I think actually getting beat out late in the season added a dose of humble pie that he needed to work for this thing. But I still think he's the guy, and I think Barry Lunny is set to have a huge year offensively. Guys, if we're going to win 7 games offensively, we've got to average 30 points a game or more. That's only been done 4 or 5 times the last 40 years, right? So it's not necessarily a common thing for Illinois to average that. But we've got to average 30 or more points a game. I think we're right at 25 last year. And think about it. We get 5 or 6 more points. There's 3 or 4 more wins right there, right? And so we've got to average that. I do believe we have the weapons to do that. I do believe Barry Lunny, this might be the first year that we'll get to see the RPO that we saw at Texas San Antonio to the level that Barry Lunny used it against us 3 years ago when he played against Illinois at Illinois. We'll get to see that with some of the weapons we have on the outside with Bryant, Zachary Franklin. We have Caden Fagan, if healthy, to bang it up the middle. I've heard good things about Valentine. I've heard other things, right? But I think we actually have the weapons. The big question, which was a huge issue, especially the first 5 games of last year, is Bart Miller's offensive line. I think Coach Miller's a great coach. Read your write-up as well, and I thought it was fantastic. I always like what Bart Miller has to say. But can J.C. Davis hold up as the transfer from New Mexico on left hand? He looked good in the spring game. I haven't watched him live at all. I know you've watched him more live. Josh Krutz, hey, your dad is NFL royalty. I don't even know if Krutz is a Hall of Famer. His dad's a Hall of Famer. He might be a Hall of Famer.
No, he's not.
Maybe if they won some more games, he would be, but a good football player nonetheless, right? And so he's solid. What's Zy Chrysler going to be? What's Josh Gesky like? Is it going to be Priestley? Is it going to be Henderson at the right tackle? How about some of these transfers? We got to give time. And remember, it was one of the most lackluster running attacks that Brett Bielema's ever had last year, right? And make no mistake, even with a guy slinging the rock around and Barry Lunny wanting to run the RPO, they still want to run the football. Guys, there's so much to get to. This might have to be longer than an hour because I just keep going.
Jay, what gives you confidence in that Lunny Altmyer combination of taking that leap? I do think they'll run the ball better. I got to see practice the other day. I think Josh Gesky was phenomenal. They're very confident in Krutz. I think J.C. Davis is legit as a starting left tackle in the Big Ten. Priestley has the talent. We'll see if it all gets together. I do wonder if Brandon Henderson can push Priestley or Zy Chrysler at any point this season, but it just feels like they actually have options and some depth and some competition in that group. And I do think they're physical, and I think Caden Fagan can be a star. But what about that Altmyer-Lunny combination, if they're able to run the ball, do you think can take them to that next step?
So I think, us young bucks remember dial-up internet, right? I mean, it was like 56K modem or whatever. And I don't even know what the modems are now, fiber optic or whatever, right? But I'm not going to say Luke Altmyer was that slow as far as the upload speed when it goes to decision-making. But it kind of felt like when John Paddock came in, we went to college, we got Ethernet in the 6-pack, right? Where you were like, oh my gosh, Napster, LimeWire, like, well,
that is such like a 2003 to 2005 reference.
For so date myself, bro.
It was different in our day when you went from home to that college Ethernet, man.
You got that college internet, bro. I mean, you were downloading Napster, LimeWire, who knows what, right?
My Winamp was full. Right? My Winamp was full, man.
Yeah, and then you burned your CDs. I mean, you can tell, man, I'm born in the 80s, raised in the 90s kid, but I went to college in the 2000s. But that being said, the upload speed for Paddock, because I think more game experience, was there. And it allowed Illinois not to give up as many sacks, but he was limited a little bit more in what he could do. But he processed faster. I think Luke's going to be able to process faster. But when was the last time we had some big receivers that could go up and get a ball and win a jump ball? Josh Imatorbhebhe, for sure, right? But when you run a slant or an RPO or you want to throw the ball down the field, you got to have receivers that can win contested throws, right? One thing I've seen with Zachary Franklin is he's always been able to win contested catches, especially in the slant if you're going to run the run-pass option, okay? He can go up and get the football. Pat Bryant, at times, can win those battles. There's been times where it's hit his hands. He hasn't come down with it. I think Pat takes a leap. There's sometimes Pat looks like he's an all Big Ten receiver. No question. And he's a guy that's developed a ton, right? Wasn't that highly touted out of Jacksonville, but has developed a ton. I think he can take a big leap. He just has to make the plays when they're available. I think Ashton Hollins is a bigger receiver that they've developed as well. Okay. So there's other guys in there. We've had a lot of small receivers over the years, and Isaiah Williams wasn't bad, that's for sure. And there's always going to be a spot for them in the slot, whether it's Hank Beatty or is it Mario Sanders? Am I getting that right? Or Kenari Wilcher, right? There's going to be a position for that, but we haven't had big body guys that's really hard for a DB to come around and get a pass breakup. So I think the combination of the processing time, the big receivers, right? And I think he learned a lot of valuable lessons early on in that football season with some of the turnovers he made. Penn State is the one that sticks out. And I think he's got a guy in Barry Lunny that believes in him, and this is his team. So that's why I'm excited about him taking a leap. I think Cole Rusk will be missed for sure. I think he brought a skill set at tight end that the other tight ends didn't necessarily have. But that being said, I do think they'll be able to move the football much better than they did last year.
What do you think is the key to reinvigorating that run game? Because I think Caden Fagan has the talent to be an all Big Ten type talent if he stays healthy. Aiden Lawford's had a good offseason. Josh McCray, can he return to 2021 form? We will see. But what is the key up front in that running back room to make that a strength of the team again, Jay?
Well, I think one thing, you got to stay on schedule, right? I mean, if we got really off schedule offensively, not able to get a push on first and second downs, obvious passing situations, and exposed some of our guys in pass blocking, because a D lineman always has to take care of his run gap first. And there's an advantage, right, if you don't know if they're running or passing, because it's like, okay, I got to take care of my run gap first, and then I can get in my pass rush. If I know that it's pass, I can really tee off on somebody, right? I mean, there's calls that linebackers make all the time. I know we did this. Hey, if I knew it was a pass, I'd give them the go ahead, and then they have no run gap responsibility, and it's on me if it's a run, right? So I think, one, we got to stay on schedule. Two, we did not have when Isaiah Adams had to switch over to the other side of the line, we did not have a combo of two guys that we could consistently run behind to get a yard. Many games this happened, Nebraska being the one that probably stuck out the most of not being able to get a yard. I believe Kreutz, Geske, and J.C. Davis can be that couple, that trio where you can get a yard behind them and Caden Fagan can plow ahead. So can you win on third and short? And then lastly, and this is where the RPO comes in, because I keep going back to this. I know I've said this a ton. I'm not saying we're going to be RPO all the time like Minnesota's been over the years, but when we can run the RPO, we can do the run pass option on first down. If that backer is going to be aggressive, we can plunk it over the top to Franklin or Bryant. If he's not going to be aggressive and back off, then we're going, and that's in zone coverage, then we're going to run the rock, right? Now, if they go man coverage, then we know they've got an extra hat in the box, right? And we've got to have guys that can win man-to-man, which with a bigger body, you might see more jump balls, right? You might see more 1 or 2 step up to give the O-line a break on every play where, hey, I don't really have to protect all that much. Maybe I just cut, get the hands down, and have a playoff. So I think the combination of all of those things, and always this, when you are ahead in a football game, you have less penalties. There are some penalties that really hurt us, and I think that's when you're straining, when they know that you're running a pass. When you keep the defense off balance, you're going to have less penalties. You're also going to have less injuries. So I think getting started fast, we got started slow, and we started slow in drives and started slow as far as scoring in the game.
It always felt like when Fagan was in, and when he started those games, Jay, like they were on schedule. There just weren't any losses, right? Like he gets you a yard or two and then get you into 2nd and 8 as opposed to like 2nd and 12.
Yeah, no, I think he's a difference maker. We thought Caden Fagan can probably play 3 or 4 different positions, whether it be outside linebacker or tight end. I think he can be a legitimate running back. We've seen him as a freshman be a legitimate running back, right? And make a ton of plays. Now, is he going to break a long one? Maybe not. I mean, that Minnesota swing pass, though, we saw he has some more speed than actually you would think. And he kind of carries the mentality that Brett Bielema wants. And so I think he'll be the number 1 guy. I was impressed, though, in the spring game when I saw Aiden Lawford run the football. I saw him run between the tackles. I saw him be not just a sweep kind of gadget guy. So I think he is a change of pace guy that they can have. I know there's other guys in there. I mean, we've have yet to see McCray be the guy he was as a freshman because of injuries. Can he be that? Correct me if I'm wrong. It's Khalil Valentine. He seems to be more of a hybrid of speed and power. I haven't seen him do one live carry. I think it's hard because I haven't seen these guys live. I'll know a lot more when they play their first game.
All right, Jay, let's switch to the defensive side of the ball. And for me, the story of the season is Aaron Henry's second year, right? The first year did not go very well. We talked all about it last year. So what kind of changes, what kind of adjustments are you expecting from Aaron in his second year? Because Brett admits, like they went through growing pains. And when you lose a guy like Johnny Newton, I don't know if you're going to just try and insert a guy to try to do the same thing.
Right. Well, I think you lose Ryan Walters in the first year. And so Aaron Henry comes in, and then you lose Johnny and Keith. And although Keith was banged up a lot of the year, we found out Johnny was banged up a lot of the year, and had to get off-season surgery and whatnot, and do some different things. I don't know if it was surgery, but he definitely had to rehab some. And so I think going into last year, I was concerned that we wouldn't be able to stop the pass because we had lost so much in the defensive backfield. I was not concerned about the front four. I thought that would be the strength of the football team. This year, I'm really concerned about the run. I want to know who's actually going to be the guy up front that's going to make plays. I've heard T.Rod Edwards is having a good camp. I've heard Alex Bray has made some, but Alex Bray is really young, right? We're playing in the trenches against, fourth, fifth, sometimes sixth-year players because we still kind of have that COVID year hanging over us. I don't know what that's actually going to be like. So I think stopping the run is concerning. I think we've leveled up at linebacker. I think Kenena Odeluga and Rosiak and James Kreutz gives us a really solid crew of young guys that I think, not so young anymore, but that can be solid linebackers. Again, I don't want to forget about our outside linebackers either, or defensive ends. I think Gabe Ackes to be the first guy. He needed more production than he had last year. And Seth Coleman, those are two guys I think that went to media today, Gabe and Seth Coleman. I mean, they're looking for those guys to produce, and Alec Bryant. So from a big picture though, can we figure out a way to stop the run? If you can't stop the run, you're going to see it all day. And then on the back end, we've got to be better. And we but turnovers. Yep. You need more turnovers, and turnovers comes from getting the offense off schedule and creating pressure on the quarterback, which creates fumbles and or interceptions. We have not done that at a consistent level. Last year, we did that a lot 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago, 31 takeaways. Last year, 15. Like that's a big difference in defensive production and efficiency right there. All right, I want to take a minute to tell you about Home Field Apparel because they are the premium collegiate apparel brand, and they're based in nearby Indianapolis. Home Field sent me a few shirts, and what I love about them is, of course, they have incredibly comfortable, well-fitting shirts, but they also have officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs, and they have more than 180 plus available colleges, including, yes, your Illinois Fighting Illini. They have great gear for the upcoming football season, so for the warm weather games, check out their Script Illini t-shirt, the Orange Ringer tee, the vintage Oski Wawa helmet, or for the fall chillier games, check out the Script Illini hoodie, the Flying Illini hoodie, the Flying Illini quarter zip, and if they're still available, you might want to check out homefieldapparel.com for this. Check out their Script Bomber jacket. It is awesome. Also, don't miss their Can't Miss Kickoff 2024 campaign. So Home Field is giving away these special football boxes, and these platinum VIP boxes include 3 never-before-seen items from your school that are not available anywhere else. They're curated so fans have new gear to wear all season long, suitable for all weather conditions. And these platinum boxes also include other exclusive items, including a new hat or ringer, a VIP koozie, and a 2024 Platinum Pass, which guarantees 20% off and early access to your school's football releases through the 2024 season. The football boxes are available on August 9th, so these will sell out quick, so go check them out. Go to homefieldapparel.com to check out their great selection of Illini gear and use code Illini24, that's all capitals, Illini24 for 15% off. That's Illini24 for 15% off at homefieldapparel.com. Let's start up front, Jay, because I'm really interested. Like I have this thought that I think you're going to see more 4-2-5 this year because I just feel like it gets your best players on the field. Sure. It gets Odeluga on the field instead of maybe the third defensive lineman who could be a young guy like Bray or Pat Farrell or Jeremiah Warren, where ideally I feel like those guys would be big contributors next year, right? Like I feel like that would be the ideal, but it seems like they've made a lot of progress. Do you think there's that kind of change? I mean, they are multiple defense. They do a lot of different things. So is there anything schematically that you think could fit this team?
Well, I mean, it was interesting because we almost exclusively saw 5-man fronts under Ryan Williams, right? And I think it helped a little bit when you had Calvin Avery and Randolph, and Johnny Newton there, right? And then last year we saw him mix it up a little bit as far as 4-man fronts. Yeah. Do we have more depth probably at the defensive back and linebacker position? Probably. So I could see that happening. I could definitely see it happening against pass-friendly teams. Right. You go and play at Purdue. You go and play someone who wants to air it out a little bit more. Yes, I can see that. And I think you're right. I think you got to get your best 11 on the field and move people around to get it where they're at. One thing, if you can keep James Kreutz healthy, and he's been banged up a little bit here and there. He's a guy that's flashed and has an aggressive nature to him that I think can kind of flip and go back and forth and be in those 4-2-5 situations, but can also be heavy enough to stop the run. Those are the kind of things we're looking for. Rosiak's probably their best overall linebacker. Odeluga, though, flashes when it comes to turnovers and making big plays. And so it's really hard to pinpoint, though. I do think a 4-2-5 could be seen, but something has to change. So I'm looking forward to what were the adjustments from last year to this year.
All right, the secondary, Jay, obviously was a huge weakness last year. You lose all those guys. Taz had so many penalties that really hurt them. You had to play some young guys because your JUCO guys you brought in weren't ready. And then the injury to Matthew Bailey really, really hurt this team. And they just didn't have as many playmakers back there. So Miles Scott, Xavier Scott, Tyler Strain all returned for a second year as starters. You add Terrence Brooks. Sounds like Caleb Patterson is competing for that starting job with Brooks. But most importantly, maybe even Matthew Bailey comes back. So they're going to be better. How much better do they have to be, Jay, in the back end?
They got to be a whole lot better. I think we really, really were spoiled in the middle of our defense to have two safeties like Quan Martin and Sidney Brown, guys that second and third round picks respectively, right in the heart of your defense. And I think it made everybody better. I think it made Taz better. I think it made Devin Witherspoon better. We know what Devin Witherspoon did and certainly continues to do at the NFL level. But I think Matthew Bailey, a guy that played under those guys and earned some time actually in that first season with 3 or 4 NFL guys out there. I think that's a guy that they recruited, they've developed, and believe that he can be a guy that's big. Now, didn't play much last year because of at all, really, maybe a series or two and injured, right? And so I think he's big from a leadership perspective. I know they've said that Strain has taken big steps since last year. He's got probably the most experience out of any corner that we have on the field. I think Xavier Scott, I know Miles Scott has made the big play in Toledo. I still thought Miles was probably a year away last year from being an every down player. I think he has the athleticism and of course the mental acumen to be great. But I'm really looking forward to Xavier Scott. I've always thought that he's been one of the more versatile players in that backfield. Could play nickel, could play corner if you wanted to. He's probably a safety in the mold of Quan Martin. But I think he's a good football player. I think he could be an NFL football player. He's moved around a lot and they've asked him to do stuff. As far as that other corner, I don't know how Terrence Brooks has looked. Obviously had great high school film and played some at Texas, right? Played a good amount at Texas. I know Caleb Patterson has been a guy they've recruited and is battling, right? So, but Caleb Patterson is what, on the field sophomore? Did he play last year? Some?
He played 12 defensive snaps last year. He redshirted.
So, I mean, maybe he's a redshirt freshman now. I don't know what he is, but
redshirt sophomore, yeah.
Redshirt sophomore, but like that's not a lot of experience. But you lost Zach Toby, you lost Taz Nicholson. You did bring in a couple guys. There was one guy of Ohio, I think, that transferred in.
Cox Jr. Yeah, Torrey Cox.
So you got some more depth there, and so you do have more depth there as opposed to the D line. But man, we've got to be better. So I'm looking from schematically. Do we get away from tight man coverage? Do we run more zone coverage? We did that a little bit, especially after the Kansas game. We got torched for some big plays. Do we mix in some different pressures? I don't know. I think they've got to figure out something that works for this football team.
All right, Jay, special teams had some really good moments last year. I thought Hugh Robertson had a really good year. And Caleb Griffin, not a great start, but made some really clutch kicks for Illinois. But then that return game, man, some of those muffed returns just crushed them against both Nebraska and Northwestern. So special teams wise, I always say like Illinois got to start winning games in the margins here, right? And special teams certainly is in the margins. And it felt like those big mistakes outweighed some of the good moments for that special teams last year.
Yeah, 2 years ago we were talking about red zone. We didn't do great. They improved in the red zone. So a lot of games come down to red zone, third down, turnovers, and special teams. And those are the margins you're talking about when you look at stats. Like, okay, what's our third down conversion rate? What's our third down stop rate? What's our turnovers? What's our special teams? Are we outgaining them in net punt or net return or whatever we're doing? And so I've always thought that special teams is a barometer of your depth. Because if you have good special teams, that means that the guys that are going to be playing in 2025, 2026, 2027 are good football players usually, right? Because those are the guys that are probably playing on special. They'll boost some starters on special teams, maybe on punt team or something. But for the most part, so it's a barometer of your depth. I think some of the issues, as far as handling punts and kicks, that's not a depth issue, but actually the execution of what we do. That has to be a weapon for us. I think it's Robbie Disher is the coach of special teams. I think he's got the goods to do it. I mean, as far as the coaching intel and whatnot, but we've got to be better. And I think we've got to be more consistent on the field goals. If we get in range, we've got to be more consistent. Caleb Griffin wasn't as consistent. When we have a chance to get points, let's get points. Olano has the leg. Does he have the accuracy? I think that's going to be the question that we're going to have to ask ourselves.
All right, Jay, just how do you feel about this year? The schedule, I think, makes the first 4 games really important, especially Kansas and Nebraska, because, boy, that middle part of the schedule where you have 3 top 10 teams, almost in succession there. And then the end of the year, you feel like you got a lot of winnable games in those final 4, but you worry how banged up you are, injuries at that point. So just how do you feel? What's your confidence?
I felt like I was positive because I had momentum last year, right? And so probably more positive than maybe I should have been with some of the offensive line issues that were apparent. But I thought, man, we've got some great D linemen. We should be able to win in the trenches. We didn't do that. And so, but I'm also not taking the negative momentum of last year and missing a bowl game and saying, I'm down on this team. I'm really high on the offense. I am high on I'm really high on the offense. I think we can protect. We got weapons and playmakers to make plays, to make yards after the catch. I think that's going to be the differentiator for this football team. And I still believe that Brett's the guy to I won't say turn this thing around, but to have sustainable success. Because I think part of it's been turned around. The football games are much more entertaining to watch than, just one quarter that's, kind of competitive, and then second quarter everybody's checked out. So I think I'm more optimistic than most this season. Yeah, they have good teams on their schedule. But 2 years ago, we were a play or 2 away from beating Michigan. I think Michigan's going to be good. I don't think they're going to be Michigan of last year. Do I think Oregon's going to be good? Yeah, but you always have to play good teams in the Big Ten. I'm more bullish on this team. I like 7 wins for this football team right now. That's really bullish because I know people will say, hey, look at their schedule and do that. And but I think offensively we have a chance. And so that's why I'm excited about it. I hope they think they win 12 games. That's what you want as a football team. But I think as I look at it, I think they can win 7 games if you look at the schedule.
I want to do 2 quick follow-ups about a couple players. Luke Altmyer was not named a team captain, and that's caused some waves. I've seen some good players, quarterbacks, not be named team captains. I've seen good ones be named captains. I've seen some captains at quarterback struggle. Jay, he was 4th in the voting among offensive players. The top 3 got does it matter? Does it matter in that locker room whether he's a captain or not? Because leadership does matter at that position, obviously.
Why is it that it seems that some of your best players just aren't always the most vocal? I think if Luke was more vocal, he may be. I'm not saying to be a rah-rah guy to be vocal. I still don't, but I do think you need to be vocal. So from the outside looking in, I think it raises eyebrows of, okay, you got a returning quarterback who's a junior, but he's not a captain. I think it does raise some eyebrows. We're not inside practice every day. We don't know how it actually goes. And that's just how it looks like. But you see a guy like Tanner Arkin be a captain. Like, what is he? He's a transfer, I think, from Colorado State, right? Been here 2 years, 2nd year.
Yep. That's
really impressive, right? From that position, and he probably played a 4th of the offensive snaps last year. Maybe less. I don't know. I mean, you're like, what? So we also don't know how it's voted upon or what it is. I know the players vote, right? But what are the things they say they're supposed to look for? I don't know. And maybe it's just who leads this team, right? I think the old school of, hey, it's always going to be the quarterback and middle linebacker and tailback and safety are kind of done, right? They're looking for something different. So from the outside looking in, I'd say, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But I haven't been at practice all the time either. I will say this. Coaches are always looking for the best players to be vocal, because if you can be a good player and be vocal, it can change the trajectory of your team. Sometimes they are. Listen, Devin Witherspoon was a vocal guy. He talked a lot and backed it up. And I think he raised a lot of that team. I think Sidney Brown was vocal, right? I think that helps football teams, right? I think Johnny Newton talked and backed it up. I think that raised the level of the football team when they have, because when you're a vocal leader and you put the time in, you can raise the confidence and level of your football team. You need leaders that raise the confidence and level of play of everybody around you.
Yeah. So my thing is, like, I saw the Riley O'Toole effect, right? I saw the John Paddock effect last year. I feel like a quarterback has to give his team juice, Jay, right? Like, they have to go, like, when you come in the huddle, they're gonna be like, okay, that guy's gonna lead us, right? And you can do that with your talent. I really believe that. And I've seen that before, but you also got to bring it with your attitude and elevating your team when things are bad. And I do think Luke did that at times last year. Maryland, coming back and winning that game. Minnesota was a tough game, and I thought he played pretty well in that one and had a couple drops from his receivers. But I do think his leadership is a fair question, because it's not his ultimate strength, but can he elevate them with his play? It sounds like he's really respected. He's built good relationships. Pat Bryant told me he's being more vocal, but it's just not who he is. So if he produces, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. If he produces and throws for touchdowns and runs for touchdowns, I feel like it'll be fine. Like, him being a captain doesn't matter. But if he doesn't do those things and Illinois is losing games, then it is an issue. Like, it's kind
of like Jay Cutler.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's that, but Jay Cutler, wasn't seen as kind of a captain sort of guy, but really talented guy, right? But I go back to this. I mean, Nathan Scheelhaus was a captain. Yes. That was a leader. You go back to Kurt Kittner, and I know Kurt, love Kurt, one of the best leaders and toughest guys I know. Average arm strength, average mobility, way above average work ethic and leadership, and let him do a Big Ten championship. Jason Verduzco, below average height, right? Tough as nails, led him to some bowl games, right? So does leadership matter at that position? 100%, right?
And then you have like guys like Tony Eason and Jeff George who are never captains, right? So it's like it can go either way, but ultimately, right. I think it's going to depend on, does he produce or not? Like, that's how he has to lead.
Yeah, ultimately, in a perfect world, I think you want your best players to be vocal leaders, right? Yes. I was reading an article on Dylan Rosiak. Dylan's having a great camp, it sounds like. He's a good football player. It doesn't sound like he's the most vocal guy. Leads by example. But I would challenge the notion that I can't improve that. Like, I think we have this thing of like, I'm an introvert, I'm an extrovert. It's the way that I'm made. Yes. Do I lean more to extrovertness? Yes, I do, for sure. But I believe being vocal is a skill that you can actually get better at.
And they're pushing him to do that. They've done it in the weight room where only quarterbacks are allowed to talk. And so they feel like he needs to get better at it.
Right. So it's like, that is a skill, right? Like, I can't go out in the real life and say, well, I want to sell real estate and houses, but I don't want to be vocal about it. You don't have a choice, right? So when you sign up to play quarterback or you sign up to play middle linebacker, you don't have a choice. If you want to be the best you can be, you've got to actually be vocal, because it's in the ultimate team game. Am I making my teammates better, or am I just focusing on me? I would argue that the first year, I'm worried about doing my job and messing up. The second year, I'm worried about doing my job, and I'm kind of thinking about how is the other team going to attack me. When you're an excellent college football player, I've got my job and my assignment stone cold. I spend no time studying my defense because I know all that, or my offense. I spend 100% of my time studying what they're going to do to me. I spend 100% of my time about that. I'm not studying my blitzes. I'm saying, how are they going to attack me? Okay. That's year 3. And year 4, I don't want to know just how they're going to attack me. I want to know how they're going to attack us. And I'm going to tell everybody how they're going to attack us so that we're all on the same page, so that my confidence and my preparation and my vocalness can raise the level of a team beyond what it should be. And that's why leadership is so important. Cut that out for a clip and throw that out. Let's go.
All right. Seth Coleman and Gabe Backus, how good do they have to be?
Well, here's the thing. I think we've got to get at least 15 sacks out of those two. Not a piece, together. Okay. I think you need 15 sacks from your best pass rushers. That's 7.5 sacks each. They're more than capable of getting that. I think if they get to 20 sacks, I think you're going to see our turnover margin shoot up, right? Because if you're at 20 sacks, you're probably at 40 or 50 pressures. You know, you're getting up there. You're getting up there with quarterback hits. You're getting up there with different things. And that's going to be a huge proponent, right? One of the things that they've really benefited from is they've had a great interior rusher inside of them, right? And they don't have that this year to the level that they had the previous years. I personally have watched a lot of college football. I'm probably biased. I have not seen an interior rusher like Johnny Newton on a consistent level. I'm trying to think.
It's crazy. It's crazy to mention this name, but like Ndamukong Suh.
Yes. And Ndamukong, you know, even with his stance was more just grinded out point of attack, more so than even Johnny, but he had some twitch to him for sure, right? But think about interior linemen and the amount of pressure and disruption that Johnny caused. All of your people that you're going to think of, you're probably, you know, the Tamba Ali's, the Bosa brothers, Chase, I can't even remember Chase's last, Chase Young, right? Von Miller. They're all kind of on the TJ Watt. They're all kind of on the edge. And to have that kind of interior rush was really unique. That should have freed up Gabe and Seth to make more plays. I think Seth at times does that. I think Gabe wants to make more plays. So the question is, can we get some interior rush from our linemen, or does that have to be manufactured through Kreutz, who's a good blitzer, or Rosiak or Odaluga is a good blitzer as well, to kind of create more one-on-one favorable matchups? But those are some of our best players, right? Now, they're not captains. Is Coleman a captain?
Yeah, Seth is a captain.
Coleman's a captain, right? Coleman's a captain, and he was at media day. You kind of take your media day guys who you think are like your best players. Right. So Coleman might be one of those guys that crosses over on both. He's been there a while.
Well, and it all goes in hand with, like, if they get pressure, the coverage could be better. If the coverage gets better, the pressure could be better, right? It goes back.
Well, yeah, I mean, and like I've always said, like everything works together. So we got to get them in passing situations. We know they're throwing the football, so be good on first and second down. Get pressure on the quarterback, he's probably going to fumble. Okay. Number 2, get pressure on the quarterback, he's probably not going to be as accurate, right?
Right.
And if he's not as accurate, then there's some room for error on coverage where I can make up a step or two if I'm got beat.
That was the Ryan Walters defense to a T. Just quarterbacks were completely uncomfortable, and the coverage was so tight, and it's just, it works so well.
Yeah. No, are we going to have a corner that is like, you know, gave up one pass on 115 one-on-one snaps like Devin Witherspoon? He gave it up for -1 yards. Probably not, right? That is the definition of a generational talent. But we need to be better than we were last year.
This is a transformative year in college athletics, Jay, when you have the Big Ten now has 18 teams with the 4 Pac-12 teams coming in. SEC, obviously, with 2 new teams, Texas and Oklahoma, and a 12-team playoff. What do you think of this new era of college athletics? I mean, for a school like Illinois or a school like Minnesota or whatever it is, or Michigan State, like, just getting to the college football playoff, I guess, is now that carrot more than getting to the Big Ten championship game. If you can find that, if you can find your way to it. But what do you make of our new reality?
So one, I think as a Midwest kid, I think it was always going to the Rose Bowl. I think that was always the big thing.
Yeah.
I think now it's probably going to the playoff, and it's not that far off that Illinois could go to the playoff. 2 years ago, I mean, they could have gone to the playoff if they won one or two more games, maybe beat Michigan or that Indiana game, whatever it may be. They could have been one of those teams. I'm not saying they're going this year, but it definitely puts those teams on the edge, and those teams on the edge have been Ohio State lately, and Penn State, and Oregon, and some of these different teams that have been on the edge. USC when they're good. You could have 4 Big Ten teams in there. Shoot, maybe even 5 if it all fell right in different ways. So I think that's interesting. So I think that becomes kind of the goal. I certainly don't think this format is going to last long.
I agree.
I think the 12 teams is going to go to 16. I think the conferences are going to get bigger. I think the conferences are going to have to sort out something from a division perspective. And they'll probably look at it and say, hey, Illinois, Northwestern, Purdue, and Wisconsin, Iowa, they're all kind of close to each other. So maybe that's the North Big Ten division. Yeah. We might end up with some of the classic things that we have ended up with before. So
you might end up with like the Big Ten, Pac-12, SEC, right? ACC.
I think it ultimately becomes that, but under the blanket of these big TV deals, right?
Basically the Fox conference and the ESPN conference.
Basically, right? So, I mean, Fox has basically said, hey, we want these Big Ten teams and really the Pac-12 teams. And it seems like the Big 12 has been kind of up for grabs, but been mostly going to the SEC. Yeah. And so the SEC and ACC are, going to be the ESPN kind of group, and they're going to divvy up teams. And it's a critical juncture. I think people realize it's a critical juncture for athletics. And I think from an Illinois perspective, basketball has been doing its part to be part of that, right? And I think the worry is football doing enough to be in the top 50 teams, programs in the country? I think that's what you want to be. You want to be in the top 50. I think you can even get to the top 64. It gets kind of dicey. You want to be in the top 50. No question Illinois basketball is there. And there's no question right now, Illinois football is not there.
Yeah. And I think, talking with Josh Whitman, like, I'm concerned like there would be contraction at some point, that Super League would happen and they want the top 40 teams and don't really make that cut right now. I don't know. I mean, it's a big brand. I think you're in a better position than like a Purdue or Northwestern or a lot of the private schools. But at the same time, like that's why right now is so important in the history of Illinois athletics and Illinois football is get the fan base excited, sell tickets so that you can afford that revenue sharing, Jay, so that you can get the players you need to compete. Like, I think beating Kansas would be a huge deal because it might end up selling tens of thousands of more football tickets the rest of the year, just creating that excitement that, hey, we can compete. We're going to get to bowl games and maybe once every 5 years or whatever it is, we can compete for a college football playoff spot and be in there at the end. Like that's what I think you're hoping for eventually, but that next step's got to happen. And it's got
100%. I would say Kansas is a lot like us. I think their basketball's in, their football is kind of, not really. I think Kentucky's done a phenomenal job with Mark Stoops of building their football brand up, from being a basketball school to having good football, right? I think Alabama's done a phenomenal job of getting basketball up, right? Because you don't see them as a powerhouse. Now, it's not all about that, but let's be honest. It's about football, number one, and then it's about basketball, right? Those things drive things. And I think it's a critical time. I don't think Josh Whitman is not aware of that. I think he's more aware of it than most ADs, that this is a critical juncture, that not all 18 teams that are present in the Big Ten today, I believe, will be in the top 50 when the dust settles in 5 to 10 years of what this thing will be. And I think that's the worry among Illinois fans. I think if you're Michigan and Ohio State, you're in, right? I do. I think even Penn State has the brand. I think Wisconsin is shown to be so consistent at both levels. Yes, they're in. Iowa and the football, Nebraska has the football range, right? But I think you get into the Minnesotas, the Illinois, the Purdues. I'll even say the Michigan State, just because they've had issues just to be consistent on the football front, but basketball, they've been a powerhouse.
Rutgers, Maryland,
right? I mean, we can talk all about it. You don't want to end up, and we're seeing this happen with Washington State and Oregon State. We just saw it happen.
Don't want to be them.
We just saw it happen, right? You know,
I think of Wake Forest and schools like that. Like I don't feel good if I'm them right now.
But you know, you don't. But see, here's the thing: if we look at history, like growing up, by the time I had any kind of semblance in the mid '90s of what football was, I didn't know who Baylor or TCU or SMU was.
That's right.
But if you grew up in the 70s and 80s in the Southwestern Conference, they were legit programs. But they had about 20 years of nothing.
Yeah.
Think about this. Baylor was out of it. I mean, they were kind of in the Big 12, but they were garbage. Rice is still garbage, right? Just being honest for the most part. SMU has just now started to resurrect from the death penalty over the last 10 years. And TCU, without LaDainian Tomlinson and Gary Patterson, I believe they'd still be in the gutter. But, you know, so there's been teams that have disappeared now, guys, right? It's not like, you know, it's not like it doesn't happen. And so Georgia Tech used to be a good football program. Georgia Tech is kind of like Georgia Tech. Where do they kind of fit?
Boston College?
Boston College. So we can name a bunch of stuff that's happened. And then you have like, nobody cared about Utah football until Urban Meyer went there, and then Whittingham has won a bunch of games. And so now you're like, well, Utah is solid. They're kind of solid in hoops. And so this is the stuff that happens that you're like, oh, this actually does. It's super fascinating to think about when you think on a real macro level.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to throw out there, Jay, as we wrap up?
I just think, man, it's great to have football season back. I'm literally looking forward just to the Big Ten Conference as a whole. I think the amount of money that Ohio State spent in the portal this year was pretty astounding, right?
It's amazing. National title game or bust for that.
It feels like that for Ohio State and Ryan Day. You know, I think he's definitely at least got to beat Michigan, right? Brought in Chip Kelly from another Big Ten school, UCLA, which is UCLA is just strange right now. I no idea what's going on. This is a proud program, and I don't know what's going on with UCLA, but I'm interested to see what Michigan looks like. You know, we said, well, Michigan's going to lose a lot. They've lost a lot the last 2-3 years, and they have literally reloaded every year, and they're just not flashy. They are about as smash mouth as you get in today's college football. You still got some great defensive linemen. What does Sharon Moore look like as a head coach? We saw him as an interim head coach. I don't know. I think that's interesting. I think Penn State's kind of on the clock. I think they're playoff or bust, right? Absolutely. If you're not in the top 12, you've got to start thinking, why do we have James Franklin as our coach if we can't be top 12, right? Okay, we're gonna let you be coach if you can't beat Ohio State and Michigan. We're fine with that. But if we don't start winning one of those two, or we don't beat Oregon or Washington or wherever we play, or USC, and we're not in the top 12, I think you could see heads fly.
This is the program that the college football playoff was like made for, because they couldn't get over Michigan or Ohio State. Now they get in. What do you do when you get in? Can you win a game? Can you get to the quarterfinal? I'm really interested to see.
I also think it's super intriguing what Alabama looks like post Nick Saban. I mean, there has not been a team that has been more imprinted than Nick Saban in recent history. I mean, I certainly, we speak for the last 20 years here, than Nick Saban and Alabama football. Are we going to have suffocating defense of Nick Saban? I don't think it's going to be the same. I don't. I think you're going to air it out a lot more with Kalen DeBoer. Is Georgia still going to be the team to beat as they've been the last 2 or 3 years? Yes. Is Clemson going to revive themselves from where they were in the late 2010s and get on with the portal and actually accept people from the portal? Or is Dabo going to be Dabo? And then out of this, in the Big Ten, who rises to be in the top 4? We think Oregon's going to be that guy with the money and everything else. We think USC is going to score a bunch of points. But do we see some other mid-tier team from the old school Big Ten rise? Is this a year that Maryland makes a move? Probably not. Their quarterback's gone. Is this a year that Rutgers, who just got rid of their AD, but their AD resigned, but can Schiano get past 6 wins? You know, can Michigan State with Jonathan Smith rebuild what has been a bad football team the last 2 years? Is Luke Fickell going to live up to the promise that he had 2 years ago? He hasn't really yet. Iowa's going to be Iowa. Yeah. Will Matt Rule and Donovan Raiola be great? I don't know. Is it Donovan? Dominic?
Dylan, yeah.
Yeah. Dylan, Donovan, and Dominic, I'm all mixed up. I'll admit when I mix up the names. But there's a lot of different questions. And then I have, you know, we don't say it a lot, but pesky Missouri, who's not in our conference, is right there recruiting similar players. They probably recruit more Texas, Oklahoma, but they recruit St. Louis a lot, right? Kansas City. And, Eli Drinkwitz, beats Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl, right? And 3 or 4 years ago, they were pretty average under Barry Odom.
From hot seat for Drinkwitz, the beginning of the season to now this guy's a top 10 coach. Yeah.
Right. So you're like we're waiting for that to happen. So there's a lot. Per typical Illinois fan, we've circled Purdue, Minnesota, and Northwestern, that those are definitely wins. As we can say, most of those are never guaranteed wins. At Minnesota under Brett Bielema, wherever he's been, has been a win. That's not guaranteed this year. But we didn't beat Purdue. We didn't beat Northwestern last year. So
if anything else, Jay, this has got to be the year Illinois beats Purdue. Like 7 of 8 they have lost, and that included Daryl Hazel's last team, might have been his last game, and Ryan Walters' team last year, which was that was a rebuilding year for the most part, and they weren't playing well.
The only time they won was the slushy game that I was calling for Big Ten Network. It was like pouring, and Brom couldn't do his offense. And they fumbled 2 or 3 times, and Illinois gave it to Dre Brown, and Dre Brown, I think, had 100 yards, which with 2 touchdowns, I think was enough to win the game.
Tony Adams pick 6 in that one. Yeah.
Yes. Tony Adams had a pick 6. So, I mean, there's a lot of memories in that mind right there of different games you've watched for the press box. But yeah, no, I could keep rambling on. I'm just excited for football. I think we're just in a unique time in college athletics. So unique. And that's why from an Illinois fan perspective, I do say this. It is so critical more than ever to support Illinois, number one, but also that we make sure that football is a bona fide top 50, I would love to say top 40 program. And I think that solidifies us for at least the next segment of what college football looks like. Cannot say enough about, I'm not a basketball guy. I do enjoy watching it. What Brad Underwood has done with an Elite 8 appearance, and then there's like reloading, and then there's like reloading, and like man, what he's been able to do. I know it's different on the football front. What he's been able to do to focus on recruiting to do is something that is remarkable, and something that we haven't necessarily seen from an Illinois coach, maybe ever, in the reloading.
But Jay, to your point of the importance of football, fiscal year 2023, football, because of the media rights package, $70 million in revenue, basketball $28 million. Like that's how important football is.
Oh, it's the economic engine, not only for the football and basketball, but for the whole sports program, right? So we got. Are these guys is Brett Bielema worth $7 million a year? Well, if he's creating $70 million and we're getting 7-8 wins, he might be worth a statue with Grange and Butkus every year, right? So we got to get it right. We can keep talking. It's going to be a great season, guys. I would just say tune in. I don't know when it drops, but we record these on Mondays. I don't know if it drops on Tuesdays or when, but
Mondays we'll drop early.
We'll have a good time. And Jeremy, just thank you for being so consistent on the Illinois front. I will say that as far as 247, packages out there, I think Illinois is a top 25. 247 for sure. So we got the media stuff down, right? But we got to make sure both programs are.
Well, J Leman, you're the goods, man. We'll talk every week on Mondays, and I know everybody looks forward to you coming back, and we do as well. So thank you for your time as always.
You got it. Take care.
All right. Thanks to everybody for listening to the Illini Inquirer Podcast. Give us a follow, rating, review wherever you get your podcast. Check us out on YouTube. Hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notifications bell as well. For J Leman, I'm Jeremy Werner. Thank you for listening to the Illini Inquirer Podcast, and have a great day.